Hello there. Thanks for joining us today on Dr. Teach Me to Parent. Remember, we're basing it on my book, Dr. Teach Me to Parent, and make sure you got a copy of this book now. You get it from Amazon if you wish, or Barnes & Noble, or you can order it directly from my website. And we're going to base our discussion today on the book, obviously, like we have each week. But today we have some very special guests who are missionaries in Japan, of all places. We're going to talk about the Japanese family and what they can teach us as an American family, what we can learn from them, and how we can improve our lives based on the lives of people from another culture. So stay tuned on as we kind of pick up this particular topic. Now, before doing so, I want to give you the quote for the day, and as I do each week, and the quote is this: "Parents are the child's first teacher." You know, when you think of that as being a very profound statement, parents, you are the first teacher your children ever have. And the foundation stone that you lay down as a teacher, the things you teach, how you teach children, how you teach them to learn, how you build a learning sense of curiosity within your children, that's up to you. You do that first, and then you pass your child on to what we call the professional teachers that we have in schools. But don't overlook the fact that you are the child's first teacher, and you have a very, very, very important task, to deal with and undertake. So do it well and do the best you can, okay? Now, today, we're going to look at the Japanese family through the eyes of the Gilberts, who have now spent, Andy and Lorna Gilbert, spent how many years in Japan?
Yeah, almost 20.
20 years now. So you got a little bit of perspective
Some.
on the Japanese family and what the family is like, and maybe what we can learn, from the Japanese family. But tell me about your family first, though. Obviously, you have a family history, and you take that to Japan, and perhaps you influence the Japanese a little bit, through your own family experiences. What would you say are some of either the defining event or defining moment, or something that you would say this really stands out as the hallmark of my family and I grew up in? Each of you, what would you say?
Yeah, I think for one of the things I look back at my family and I think of Dad. Very quiet man, didn't speak a lot. He didn't verbalize the sense of love, but he showed it in many different ways. And many of the ways is just his work ethic, how he came home every night, cared for us, got up in the morning, went to work. Before he'd go to work, he would kneel next to his bed and pray, and at night he would say his evening prayers. And those kinds of things just really impacted me.
So your father was really kind of the strong family influence.
Very quietly, but very much so.
Is that right?
A strong influence.
So he was very impactful.
Very impactful.
On your life. What would you say, Lorna?
For my family, actually, I don't know if you've talked much about extended family, but my grandfather would be the one who was my first teacher.
Is that right?
He taught me how to drive illegally when I was 13.
Sure.
And he taught me how to ride motorcycles when I was 14 illegally. But he taught me many things. I'd follow him around. He'd fix everything. I think probably the most defining thing that stays with me today is he taught me that I could do anything. Just figure it out.
Yeah.
If you're in a corner, figure it out. He'd fix a motorcycle with car parts. He'd, just fix anything with what he had. And so,
way back in 1963, I read a research article which really said the same thing, that girls develop this sense of achievement and the ability to move forward and to do things from their fathers. Not their mothers, but from their fathers and from their grandfathers. And that was a very defining piece of research to me. That it's the father and grandfather that has the strength of the family.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of the fathers are gone. They're not at home, and kids are growing up without that kind of an influence. So it's a very important one.
Yeah.
I'll bet you're glad for that.
Oh, sure.
I mean, when you look back on it, I bet you've drawn strength from it.
I can't imagine not having a father.
Yeah. Okay, let's just jump to the Japanese family. The father. Is the father a strong person in the family, the Japanese family? Or is it more mother-oriented, built around the mother? Or is it the older, whether it's grandmother or grandfather? Or what's the central point?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Japanese have a saying about the husband, And the saying is a husband needs to be healthy and absent.
Healthy and absent.
That's a good husband. A good husband is healthy and absent.
Is that right? What does that mean?
What does that mean? It means he's working and able to provide.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of family, if he's home, the wife has to serve. And so if he's home, unhealthy, then she's busy taking care of him.
Yes.
If he's healthy and working, then the family is provided for, and he's not there to need cared over.
To interfere.
To interfere.
I get
so the
it.
home really is the mother runs.
Mother run. It's a mother family.
It's changing a little bit with the younger society.
Is it?
But
what about the grandmother? Because don't they have a strong emphasis on grandparenting?
Probably grandfathers would have more impact because they are at that age where they can enjoy their children.
Oh, now
they're
they're
not
home and
working,
can enjoy their
they're
children.
home, they're available, and so grandparents can have time with the children, and often they'll live together, and so they're there and they're available to help. And grandparents just love to be with their kids because now it's their time.
Is that
to do
right?
that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they often have multi-generational homes.
Yeah.
Which we
That's
are
right.
getting
Yeah,
away
they
from
all
in
live.
America.
Yeah, three different
And
generations.
so you'll have 3 generations in a home where the
Yeah.
grandparents do a lot of involvement with the
Yeah.
grandchildren.
True of a lot of cultures. A lot of cultures do. We don't particularly.
No,
But a lot of cultures do that. There's strength in that, is there?
I think so,
mean,
yeah.
do
I
you
think
see strength in that in the Japanese family?
There's a lot of strength. I think the cohesion, I think the respect for the elderly is really modeled within the context of the home, and that branches out into society as well.
Yeah. So when you look at the family home, it's fairly structured. I mean, there are roles that people assume.
Yeah.
Mother has her role, dad has his role, as you just defined. Grandparents have their role. The kids have their role, do they? Or
Their role is to study. Be kids,
Their role is to study.
They wouldn't have chores as much like we do. Growing up, we always had chores we had to do. There's not so much that kind of concept because they're there to study and to do schoolwork.
interesting,
and-
isn't it? How we children know what they're supposed to do.
Like high school students rarely would take on part-time jobs because they need to study. Even junior high kids, they have to study and pass a test, and that determines what high school they can get into. So
And then obviously whether they can get into college or not.
and then
at
that
all.
feeds the college system.
So when you are in the family, the child comes home from school and I assume does hours of homework, right? I assume that's what they do.
They often have what they call juku, which is after-school schools. So areas of weakness, they will go and study
we
and
would call
focus.
that like remedial or
Remedial.
some type of
Cram school.
School. Except they have
tutoring
it,
or whatever.
They have it
yeah.
almost every night.
Every night.
Almost every night.
So how long would that be?
All through high school.
But they might come home like 7 or 8 at night. So dinner is late at
So
night.
they'd end school, they'd go to the special school for
They have
another hour or
clubs.
2 or 3.
So they have their clubs, right?
Yeah.
So if they're in karate or whatever, after school they'll go to their club, and then after that they go to cram school, and then come home 8, 9 o'clock,
And then study
and then have
After
more
that.
study.
And then do a little more home study.
if they have homework or whatever.
Right.
Because the cram school wouldn't necessarily be related to their homework. It's maybe a whole other topic. Maybe they're learning English. Maybe they're working
Oh,
on
I
something
see.
else.
So it's called cram school?
Cram, I was saying. We
cram.
kind of say cram
Oh, like
school.
to cram.
Cram,
Oh,
right,
okay.
Yeah, but it's
cram
more-
school. So you learn some other subject that you're maybe history, maybe
Or an area of weakness that you
Computer skills or
strengthen
whatever.
to
Yeah.
be able to pass the formal test to get into the.
I see.
Yeah.
So a kid then leaves home at 7 in the morning
It varies, but according to how far they're traveling, they
Yeah.
could leave at 7.
and then come home at 8, 9,
Yep.
does a little studies, goes to bed at 10, 11, and then
They're up.
repeats that
It's a busy day.
4 days, 5 days, 6 days a week.
They're changing it a little bit. Used to be school was on Saturdays as well.
That's
so it was
right.
6
Most
days
most
a
countries
week.
do have school on Saturday.
And now they're doing more club activities, different things on the weekends. But they'll have activities on Sundays as well, Saturdays and Sundays. So.
So the school is the central place for children.
It really is.
They spend all the time. I mean, you look at you're spending 12 hours at least.
Yeah,
in
even
school.
even learning discipline. They're really not disciplined. The children aren't disciplined much in preschool ages. When they're up till 4 or 5, then they start attending preschool, kindergarten, and that's the place where the disciplining begins to really take place in the context of
Sure.
school.
Like we would hear as a kid, wait till your father gets home. Mom's
That's
going
right.
to tell on father. But in Japan,
Father-
they say, I'm going to tell your teacher.
You tell your teacher.
So they even tell the teacher about,
So the
difficulties.
teacher
So
becomes the
teacher
critical
becomes-
disciplinarian or the
Yes.
person that you become afraid of. So what I'm hearing is kind of like children build their life around the school, dad builds his house or his life around his work, and mother builds her life around the home. And they're three separate.
Yeah.
But when do they come together?
I think it's one of the weaknesses of the system is they have a hard time finding that time. Sundays,
Yeah, Sunday.
if the child has an event, the family may go to the event or whatever. Sundays may be the time. Often the times the father is so tired, he'll just sleep the day. Often
They do have special events, though, along the way. Like schools have what they call undokais, or sports day. And on sports days, the whole family comes. And
I
it's
see.
a day of,
They don't have classes, they have sport.
Right.
Maybe
It's
soccer, I
usually
assume.
it's usually a Sunday. Well, it's all kinds
it's
of
all
activities,
kinds of
depending
different-
on the grade.
It's not
you
all
know.
just sports. Sometimes it's
And the parents actually participate.
Oh, so it's
there's
a family
some-
thing, not
yeah.
just
it's
school.
actually a community thing because
It's a
even
community thing,
even our neighborhood, we didn't have children, but we were invited to this undokai to participate as part
as part of
of
the family.
this community.
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 So it's a community, not a family, as such.
Family focused, but then it's broader
Yeah.
as well.
And they do that right across Japan?
Yeah, all across
think so.
Japan.
I
mean,
Usually
this is,
once or twice a year. Once for
pretty-
sure. Sometimes fall and spring or something.
Pretty standardized, I think. Yeah.
So this structure of family life, mother, father, kids, is not just in the big cities.
No,
I mean, this is across the country, rural, large cities, whatever. Is that?
think
I
it's
mean, this is a Japanese way of life.
I think it's pretty
It's not
similar.
just a kind of an urban or rural or
There's ebb
whatever.
and flows, of course, but I think pretty.
Pretty much that way, huh? Do you value it? I mean, here you come from America. You come from a different background altogether. And then you walk into this kind of a country and you see this kind of a family structure. Do you value that? I mean, do you see the good in that, or
I think you see
is
this-
it troubling to you?
You see the strengths, and you see, I think, the holes. The strengths, I think, is it is a they say it takes a village to raise a child, right? And you see that lived out in Japan. You see the school system, parents of other children. They really take care. Children are very highly valued in the context of Japan society, and it's a community. The individualized system, it doesn't exist there. It's all about group identity. It's all about family, and so that has, I think, a very strong impact upon even the child, how he acts.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to embarrass his family or his community. So there's a lot of social pressure that actually keeps people in a certain definition of life.
Sure.
But I think
Yeah.
you see the holes where it's sometimes so societal that you lose the nuclear contact at times.
But they don't know that because they grow up this way. This is the way they grow up. This is their normal, right?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't see that as a whole.
But
They would see this as a strength.
I was listening to a radio program here a while back, and this young guy was calling into the radio program, and the guy he'd won some prize, and the guy was saying, "Are you going out drinking now with the buddies, huh?" And he goes, "No, I'm going to go home." And he goes, "Oh, you're not going out drinking with everybody? Everybody does that." And he says, "No, I'm going to go home." "Oh, you're married, got a wife. She won't let you go." And he goes, "No, actually, I have a 3-year-old, and I just want to go home and be with her." And the radio guys were just dumbfounded that he would do this.
And even
so-
tell about it.
And then he said,
It's value. It's
I
values.
grew up with a father who was not ever home. I don't want to do that to my children." And so I think that they do know. And some men are trying to change that societal.
Interesting how our values, are shaped by our childhood.
Sure.
Good and things that we had or didn't have as a child.
right.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us for this first segment. We're going to take a little break right moment now, and the Gilberts are going to come back, and we're going to talk about another aspect of the life in Japan and the family in Japan, and look at the extended family and the grandparent role and some of the other outside influences that affect family life. So get your coffee and come on back in about 3 minutes, okay? Okay, nice to have you back with us, and we're picking up our discussion here with the Gilberts, Andy and Lorna Gilbert, who are missionaries in Japan and have been in Japan now for some 20 years. And we're looking at the Japanese family and maybe what we as Americans can learn from a family of another culture and how that family life takes place. And maybe there are some advantages that maybe we could pick up and strengthen our own family when we compare ourselves to another culture, in this case, Japan. Now, here's the question that I have. We were talking about the Japanese family and how much it's organized in the home by the father, or by the mother, and how much the children are really organized around the school, and how the father has really organized his life around work. So we have these three arenas kind of thing. But the mother is in charge of this family. And so therefore the children apparently really relate to her and not to the father? Is that the dynamic?
Yeah, I think for the most part that would be how it is, because we as Americans say that the most important relationship is husband-wife. And if
That's
we have
right.
a strong relationship,
we always ask very first.
then we have a strong family. But in Japan, the most important relationship is mother-child, particularly mother-son.
The son, not the child.
So
as such.
the bond is with mother-child, and that is the most important relationship in the family. And so you see a little different dynamic than with the mother and the children. I mean, mother and children as a whole, but especially like a son.
Well, that sounds like the mother spoils the children or spoils the boy more than the girl, because because he's special. He can do anything he wants. I mean, is that what you're saying? That
Well, I think the oldest
or
son.
is there more training developed towards the boy?
More expectations, for sure, on the oldest
higher
son.
expectations.
Yes, especially as they get older. They'll be expected to take care of the family. They'll be expected to take care of the family altar and
So that's not
dead
spoiling the kid.
relatives.
Because
Not as they
if
get
you
older,
spoil
it
the
gets
boy in
hard.
our family, in our culture, you lower your expectation. You don't expect anything out of him. You just cover for him.
But I think it's a balance in a sense, because the oldest son especially has responsibility for the family
Yeah.
once they get older. He also gets a lot of things when he's younger. So he gets kind of spoiled. Yeah, but he also has high expectations of being successful, of getting into the right high schools and colleges, and then to take care of the parents. They probably move in together, and then he has the responsibility. His family and wife has the responsibility of caring for the parents as they get into older age, and then he takes on, especially once they pass the family God shelf and altar, and puts it on and so forth.
So the mother really has the responsibility of raising a strong, responsible, independent son.
I don't know how independent, but
Well, dependent on her.
yeah, right.
But to be independent as he ages, or
to be able financially to handle the expectations, requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, the expectations are very high on, especially the oldest son.
so what would a mother do then to build this bond? I mean, is it just so natural in the culture that she doesn't have to do anything; it just happens, or does she actually have to step forward and kind of educate the kid that his responsibility is towards her? I mean, how does that come about?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really
think it's
know.
probably almost natural
Uh-huh.
because it was done. They see it observed
Over
as a
the
kid.
generations.
Over the generations, they come in and they are now in this place of moving in with their oldest son, and okay, now it's my turn to kind of, I hate the word control is a good word, but have control of this situation, and they've kind of geared their oldest son specifically throughout life to be ready and be raised in a way that this expectation would just be
It's an interesting point, isn't it? How, as a parent, you raise your son with the idea that he's going to take care of you as you get older. In America, we build a nest egg of money so that we can go to a nursing home or we can live in an apartment, we can live by ourselves, and our kids don't have that responsibility.
Right.
But that we are independent. So we build a nest egg of money. They build the nest egg of a son who is educated with the responsibility to look after them as parents for the rest of their life.
Yep.
Right. Right.
In the home. In the home.
For the most part,
For the
yeah.
most part, yeah.
Well, even if they're very sick, they'll still have nursing care come into the home often and
Oh,
take
the
care
nursing
of
care
them.
comes home.
So we don't, I mean, they do have nursing homes, but not like here in America, or like we have assisted living, or
Yes.
we have all these different levels of care.
Yes.
They have some of that, but not to the extent that we have it here.
It's assumed the family will do it.
Yeah, that's a lot of cultures.
Yeah, a friend of ours, her father just passed away, and they rotated through cousins, nieces, daughters.
He was bedridden, yeah,
He was
couldn't do anything on
bedridden.
his
So
own.
And
they
they also
require
had
that 24-hour
They
care.
also had nursing care come
Yeah.
in, And they were exhausted, but
So the family did
the
it.
family did most of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But when you're educated that way, it's just natural. I
Yeah,
guess.
you
I mean,
just-
it isn't a
you know it's
burden.
coming.
You aren't mad about it. I mean, this is just your responsibility. This is like going to school.
It's what you do.
I mean, this is what you do.
Yeah.
It's like going to work. You do it,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody complains.
Even if it's not easy, you just know that's what
just
you should
part
do.
of-
It's
part of
the
life.
obligation, and
Yeah.
accept that. And I think it's a culture of obligation, so
Sure.
it's very natural.
Well, how does this go out to the extended family? You mentioned a little while ago about cousins and nephews and people like that, and then you got grandparents. I mean, what's the role, of extended family? They have to take care of their own independent families, and then do they come together at all? I mean, is this a culture where parents and extended family members get together in just larger family, or are they all separate units?
There's several times a year that it's almost designated when they come together.
Uh-huh.
One of it is New Year's. And so all the family comes to the home of the oldest son or
So
the
this would be
grandparents.
all the extended family, so you would be
The kids,
lots of people.
Yes, the children of the grandparents and then their kids. And then Obon, which is in August in the summertime. And it's actually, I don't know if you can equate it to our Halloween, or the sense that the dead relatives are the spirits of the dead relatives are returning home.
Oh,
And
nice.
so it's a time where they all go to the grave and all the family gathers. And so there's 2 times a year that's the expectation that the family all comes together. And traffic stops. I mean, it's crazy to get a
Is
ticket
that
to go
right?
anywhere in
I
Japan.
mean, this isn't a family. This is all family.
Right,
This is
right,
this is a
right,
culture.
Shut
right.
down the-
Everything shuts down.
Business
It's-
is shut down for almost a week.
Oh, it's
in
not
both
a day.
cases.
Yeah,
I mean, it goes on for
no, it's
Several days.
Several days. yeah.
several days.
But a lot of people if they're going to take vacation time, that would be a time to fill in and take a week so they can spend travel. I mean, just travel can be 2 days.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Go down there.
Yeah. So there is a time then to build family life around the extended family. They aren't just off.
Yeah, no,
They may
but
be
you
all
really
across
come
Japan,
together.
but those 2 times a year is
But
when
they make
come
high value
together.
out of that. I mean,
Very
you
high.
plan for that. You save money.
businesses even work around it
Uh-huh.
to give those families the time.
Just
to
those
do
2 times. Just those 2 times.
Well, you have other holidays, Golden Week in May. But that's not specifically geared towards family like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a nice feature.
In some ways, it's a good feature.
I mean, it's
it really
a nice little
helps.
feature, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of pull family together and.
Yeah, it's kind of like Thanksgiving time in America in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
a
that
little
would be,
extended vacation,
similar.
so family can
Although
get.
we do it in a day or half a day. I mean, they do it 2, 3, 4 days.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Yeah,
much
part of
more
that's
value
because of
given to
what's involved with it. Not only going to see family, but you have
Yeah.
to do all the rituals around the grave sites and
Yeah.
and the god shelves and stuff.
I'm a grandparent. What's the role? What's the expectation of the grandparents? What would I need to know?
I think it's similar to America.
Is it?
The
Is it?
grandparents, but you may live together, so that would be a little
You
bit
live in the
different
home with the
if,
kids.
if
Yeah.
you're there.
Who owns the home, by the way? Is the home owned by the grandparents? The kids live in it, or is the home owned by the kids and the grandparents live in it?
Usually by the grandparents.
So
and
they own the house,
move
basically.
in. But it could be the other way around.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not, but usually I think it's a
But they live
grandparents' home
together.
that they come in together. But you'll see just grandparents doting over their grandchildren, just like Americans do, carrying the pictures, if their grandparents come or their grandkids come to visit, they want to show everybody, similar.
It's fun
I
because
think.
it's the time that you really see, as Lorna said earlier, the grandfather really getting involved with his grandchildren that he may not have been as involved with his own kids.
Done that as a child. So children don't have the close grandparent relationship when they're children, but they have that
Close father.
when they become older. So maybe that's what, 12, 15, 16 years of age or something like that by the time that the grandparent might retire and be in the home and be available.
It varies according to how.
I think as soon
late
as
the
they
son.
have grandkids,
Is that as soon as grandkids?
Yeah,
Just-
they retire also earlier than we do in
Do they?
Japan, and so some retire, by 60 or 58 even, and so they're available to be with their grandkids, and so
And that's expected, kind of. I mean, that's just part of the culture. It's part of the.
they look
part of
forward
what
to
you
that. I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what does a grandparent do with his kids besides take them for a walk in the park? I mean, do they go on trips together? Do they read to them, so to speak, and go to school and take them out for lunch and have special times? Or is it just kind of built around the house? Just be there, just being together in the same place in the same time?
I'd say yes.
All the
those.
above,
I think
yeah.
obviously it's
Just like-
mostly around the home, is the primary, because that's where you're spending most of your time. But they do, when they go on trips, they almost always go on multi-generational trips. Grandparents are with them. They go to Hawaii together. They go to
Everybody goes.
skiing together or whatever. And if they're going to go on a trip, it's everybody goes together. You don't leave grandparents behind, so you can get family time. You just do it. It's part of what
Let me ask you
society
this.
says they are.
Is there such a thing as the rebellious teenager? The rebellious child who just breaks from the family and says, I don't want that. And lives a secretive life or a sneaky life, or gets off into inappropriate behavior, that we'd call it. I mean, is there such a thing going on there?
I think it happens later in life. So it's not so much like the teens, it's more the early 20s.
Oh,
that
really?
you have someone that the workforce is so strong and just narrowed in, and people just don't fit that all the time. And so you have people that they actually have a term for it. It's called NEET, N-E-E-T.
Oh, so it's a phenomenon within the
No,
culture.
how does it? I don't even
give
remember
a
what
term
this
for
is.
No education, employment, or training.
Employment or training.
Oh, really?
Because they kind of buck the system. They're like, okay, I've done this system all through high school, I'm done. And
So,
that's when they
here
buck
they'd
it.
be on the street.
Yeah.
They live at
They
home.
usually still live at
Generally, but they're, maybe not working, and parents are, what do I do? Just like in America, how do I handle this? What do I do with this child? But there's a whole group of kids like this.
It's kind of a broken place to be for a
It
child.
really is, yeah.
Where they just feel so much pressure to succeed in a certain way that it just breaks, and they say, I can't do it.
Really? So there is a broken child syndrome, but it comes a little bit later. But then that kid has no job, he has no education, he has no role.
And doesn't really want to come out of that.
Wow.
Because of what it means stepping back into the workplace and expectations.
Is that number growing? Is that more common today than maybe 25 years ago?
I think it
I would
When you
think-
went there?
Yeah, I would think. So.
It's on the growing side. Huh?
But we would think in America those type children might fall into gangs or
Sure,
something.
sure.
But here they just kind of hang out.
They just hang out.
Or they stay home. There's also a phenomenon of kids that won't go to school. They've been bullied and they just stay home. They refuse to go out of the house. And so that's a hard thing
So
too.
they isolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to take a break. Go get a cup of coffee. And come on back in just a couple minutes as we pick up our discussion on the family life in Japan. Okay, thanks for coming back and joining us now for our third segment of Dr. Teach Me to Parent. We're looking at the family life of Japan. And the Gilberts, Andy and Lorna, are with us today, who are 20-year veterans living in Japan as missionaries and have really observed the family life of Japan in a very close and intimate kind of way. And they're kind of educating us a little bit about what the family life in Japan is like, but also kind of what we can learn, from them and how we can enhance our life as Americans from learning from another culture. But, during the break, the issue of divorce we spoke about. In America, we think about the divorce rate as being about 50%. Well, it's actually higher for some populations and quite lower for other populations. There are some populations in America that divorce rate is very, very low. But kind of that magic number somewhere between the 40 and 50%. What is it in Japan? I mean, do they divorce or do they just kind of
I don't know what the percentage would be, but in the past there wasn't divorce. And part of it is because the male would get the children. And so
Just natural.
And so there wasn't divorce in years gone by. It's more prevalent now. But if you think about reasons for divorce, if the husband has their own life and you're just responsible for your kids, and this is where you're happily finding your contentment, there's not as many reasons to divorce.
For divorce.
There's not
He
that
has
conflict.
his life, goes to work, and he's gone.
And
that's
absent,
the whole
you said,
absent.
absent.
Yep.
And then mother is with the kids.
Yes.
So
and-
she divorces the kids.
But what they're finding is divorce is happening when the husband retires.
Oh, later in life.
Because suddenly he's home,
Yeah,
and
sure.
so the divorce rate is rising at that age because now they're together all the time and not quite sure they haven't been all these years, And so there's been articles and men talking about...
I've seen that in other cultures, too.
Yeah.
I've seen it in other cultures. And it was interesting. I didn't know that. But why divorce rate is higher when people are around 50 years of age? I mean, that's part of that then, huh?
7 to 10 years ago, the government changed the law where if a woman divorced her husband, she gets part of his retirement. And she used to not get any.
She didn't get the children. He gets the children.
Yeah, well, of course, this is really gearing a little bit more towards retirement age women.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Who would get the retirement, and the government changed the law so she can get up to 50%. And once they changed that law, the divorce rate among retirees just skyrocketed.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, percentage-wise, I don't know the percentages, but it was a huge.
That made a difference.
Made a huge difference because part of it was,
I
think what Lorna said. It's culturally, it just there's the reasons you come together for marriage is more for children than this love, this emotional. Attachment.
And if you get no money,
and if you don't get any finances, then you stick with it.
I mean, there's no place to go.
But once he retires, he's home all the time. Suddenly, those frictions are there. But if you don't have the financial benefits, if you will, and so it's really made an impact upon the retirees of Japan. Yeah.
So divorce is somewhat increasingly common among the older people, but is it something that would be important or valued or something that's planned for almost, or is it more like a crisis? It comes about as a result of a crisis, not something you kind of think, well, this is what will happen just naturally.
Yeah, I think it's more of a crisis. It's not the norm. It's not at all what people plan for. Maybe even America now, we kind of plan for that or think about it when you enter into marriage even, and I don't think that's the thought.
No, I think Japanese view that nuclear family, whatever its structure, as really a key part of what society is about.
I like that word.
Yeah.
That nuclear family, the strength of it, the structure of it, the expectations, the patterns. Really is very, very definite, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it makes certain parts of Japanese society very strong.
If it breaks down, it really breaks down the whole.
It does.
Yeah, it's tough. Say, Japan is known having a long history in religion. Religion is very important to the Japanese people, and they've been taught that as children, and it's in the home, it's in the temple, it's throughout their culture. Is religion today as integrated into their culture as it has been throughout hundreds and thousands of years of history?
Well, I think it is, even though I think over time it's become much more of just traditional, cultural, and not as much a pure belief system as maybe in the past it has.
So it's just like a philosophy. You just kind of
in some ways,
it.
But there's pieces that still exist. For example, in the home you have the Butsudan, the Buddhist God shelf, that you have the pictures of family where you are responsible to give some form of care to them in the
families
afterlife.
who have passed away, relatives who have passed away.
So you have to give care to them in different ways through burning of incense, maybe offering of food.
So what is the primary religious focal point? Who do they worship? I mean, is it all the same, or do they different aspects of the culture have different gods or different religious orientations?
Well, they're syncretistic, and so in Shinto they have many gods. They have the local gods that you go and offer prayers and money to, and it's kind of superstitious in a sense. It's I call it organized animism, where the rocks may have a god power, the trees, and so you make offerings to all these just so they don't do something bad, or you're
always protecting yourself, your best interest, so you don't get attacked or have crises or bad things happen to you.
Or if you want something good, then you go to the shrine and you buy a prayer that says, I want to pass this test, or my child's sick, so you want something good to happen, you go to the shrine and you purchase a candle or a prayer sheet or a stick that you then make an offering for. In Buddhism, there's a little bit more looking towards your family, probably a little more emphasis. And so within the home, that's a little more emphasized, where you're going in the morning and clapping, doing your morning prayer for the family, or
so family wouldn't claim one necessarily religion. So Shintoism is the religion of beginnings, and so of new things. So when a baby is born, or children at the ages of 3, 5, and 7 get dedicated at the Shinto shrine. If you're getting married, that's new. You go to the Shinto shrine for a wedding. If it's a funeral, you go to the Buddhist temple.
I see.
And so it's
the things that end.
right. And New Year's Eve, the 31st, you go to the Buddhist temple. It's the end of
To
the
get
year.
rid of their sins, so you ring the bell.
And on New Year's Day, you go to the Shinto shrine.
And
Beginnings.
you do this
In the
as a
beginning.
family. And you do this as a family.
Uh-huh.
And so they combine.
So
those.
you have two religions, basically, but you use one for one purpose and use the other for another purpose.
Most temples will have a shrine
nearby.
on its
Well,
own.
where's Christianity then? You know, in the context of that, is Christianity recognized? Is it part of the culture in any way, or is it just a foreign idea?
It's recognized and generally seen as something very good, but something foreign. And so for us to be there in Japan, they think as Christians, they love
Yeah, you're a
having
Christian
us.
missionary, so I mean,
Yeah.
you must be not welcome particularly, or
Well, no, we are
upon
actually very
suspicion.
welcome.
Or is that right?
But as we share about the grace of Christ, the hope that he gives through his death on the cross for us, it's something they say, well, that's your religion. That's a foreign one. We're Buddhist. And the exclusivity of Christ is a challenge because they are happy to put Jesus up on their God shelf as another one.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Just another God.
But
so
to
to speak.
but to start saying, well, he is the one true only, suddenly it begins to confront.
They have a hard time with
They
that.
have a hard time with that because they're syncretistic. They have a saying that
All
paths on the mountain lead to the top, and everyone who reaches there sees the same sun.
All roads lead to Rome.
So it doesn't matter what path you're on as long as you're on some path. And so Christianity is a good path.
So it's not rejected.
It's not rejected.
It's just
formally.
incorporated in some kind of way.
It's not rejected until a family member wants to get baptized. And suddenly they're changing paths, if you will.
Oh, so if
And they're
family
rejecting
member-
the family,
Yeah.
so they may not take care of the God shelf anymore. False worship.
We as Americans, if someone becomes a Christian, they become a nicer person. They're incorporating the qualities of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and we see that exemplified in family relationships. But in Japan, if you become a Christian, suddenly you're saying, I'm not going to take care of my dead relatives at the altar. So now you are not showing kindness. You are not honoring your parents. All of the qualities that we say are biblically a part of being a Christian are suddenly not there when you become a Christian in Japan. And so you're seen as this horrible family member, horrible
So
person,
the enormous
not
pressure
loving,
not
not caring.
to explore even the idea of Christianity, not even to study it or to discuss it or think about it because it's so conflictual.
Well, the Japanese are very
thing.
curious about it, but they see it as a cultural thing to study, not a specific religious thing. So if they're studying from a cultural thing, they're happy,
Very
actually
good.
very willing.
Yeah.
But when it becomes more of a faith issue, that's where it becomes, okay, what do I do with this? How do I take that step? Knowing family is probably going to be strongly against.
Now, would that be true, though, of older people in Japan, middle-aged, children, youth? I mean, is there a difference, or is it all the same? That same pressure to keep within the two basic religions?
Pressure tends to come from up. So
Top
grandparents,
down. Yeah.
top down. So grandparents will put a lot, because they're the ones that are going to feel the most that, hey, are you going to care for me in my old age? Or especially once I die, are you going to go to the God shelf and burn incense for me to make it easier in my life, afterlife? And so they're the ones that are going to feel it the most and put the most pressure upon. Younger people tend to be probably a little more irreligious. They do it more out of tradition, out of culture, out of family desire than an actual belief system themselves.
So when a family begins to explore the idea of Christianity, they have to do it in secret? Or they have to do it
Yeah, that's a good
kind of
question.
in a just general kind of way,
I think
academic way?
Right. I think exploring it is okay. Again, Andy mentioned when it comes to the point, even going to church is okay. But when it comes to the point of being baptized, that's where you're identifying with Christianity and choosing something. And that is the
Kind
point
of the rite
where,
of passage.
Sure.
You know, and
where
to-
conflict arises.
So are you seeing today, as missionaries to Japan, interest as compared to 25 years ago when you went there?
I think it's a different thing, especially with the tsunami. Opened a lot of doors because the Church of Japan especially, but the Church worldwide really came in and cared and loved, really showed that the love of Christ.
Which is what
in a
the
very
church does, by the way.
tangible
Yeah,
day is what
where the
we
church
do.
is strong.
Should be, yeah.
From all around the world, I
Yeah,
assume.
all around the world. But I think the key, even more so, was the Japanese church. Because a number of friends that we got to know in the Ishinomaki area would say, I didn't know there were this many Christians in Japan. Well, I think the whole church came. But it was a great model, a great witness that you can be a Japanese Christian or Japanese and be a strong Christian person
also.
who loves and cares and breaches through many cultural things to show the love of Christ. It was very powerful.
Beautiful. Hey, we're going to take a break for about 1 minute, and then we're going to ask the Gilberts this question. How can the American family improve as a result of learning about the family in Japan, Japanese family? Okay? What can they teach us? Come on back in about a minute. Okay, welcome back, and we're in our last segment here now with the Gilberts, who have now lived in Japan for 20 years as missionaries here from America. Now, here's my question. When you look at the Japanese family, and you've looked at them now for 20 years, you've lived with them, you've lived among them, what can they teach us? What can we learn from the Japanese family?
First thing I think of is the group orientation mentality, both within the context of family, that we are a family. It's not just about me. But even broader than that, within a broader segment of I'm a part of a community. I'm a part of a work community. I'm a part of a social community. The things I do impact others. And they're very conscious of what I do isn't just about me, but it's about others. And that sense of caring for others, I think, is really a very good piece that helps society keep strong, avoid some mistakes that...
we are very self-oriented.
Very self-oriented.
We really are. We look after ourselves.
Right.
And after me, you come first. That's our culture.
That's right.
But you're really saying we really could become more outward,
I think
more
so.
Other
oriented.
Others focused.
Kids are taught from early on, well, how's this going to affect your other friends? Sometimes it's in a shame way, like
Sure, shame on
how
you
are
because
you
you're a bad influencer.
Right. But how is this affecting others? And if you do something wrong as a teenager or a child, you think about the impact it's going to have on mom and dad.
Sure.
And so
That's a trait that in psychology we would like kids to have. Is to be thoughtful of how your life impacts other people. There's family. It's very family, how it impacts other family members. Yeah. We would say it in terms of how it impacts just anybody, everybody.
I think
that thought is a good one.
The sense of shame isn't always bad.
Not
we tend to think, this is always bad. There is a time when our sin that we need to have a little bit of sense of, that isn't good. Yeah. I should be embarrassed by that and ask forgiveness. And the Japanese culture really feeds
we have a hard time with that because it's a shame culture.
It's a shame culture.
There's shame cultures and there's guilt cultures.
Yeah,
and there are shame
there are
cultures.
shame culture.
What can we learn?
I think just from the Japanese family as a whole through that is a sense of honoring others. Honoring especially your mother and father. And I think it's a society that does have a lot more honor for the elderly than we do.
Is that right? In our culture, parents are thought honorable, to be honorable, but more so there. It's really a major focus, is it?
It is.
In terms of honor, it's a higher honor than just kind of they're your parents, so therefore you have to obey.
Right. No, they definitely honor them. They lift them up.
Respect
the elderly out even on the street. If you don't even know this person, they always defer. They always give honor to people of age.
Because that's a parent. A type of parent, I suspect. Interesting. Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's fun.
Come all the way from Japan to be here with us today. That's neat that we can learn about just another culture, obviously, but to learn how families live in another culture and what we can learn from them. That's super. You really were very helpful.
Oh, thanks.
To us today. Now, before we end, I always give you a little quote, something to take with you and make sure you kind of give some thought to during the course of the week now. Here's the quote for the day. The most profitable investment a person can make is in himself and in those he loves. That's very American. To be a profitable investment, you invest in yourself and you invest in those that you love. And hopefully that's your family as your primary group of people that you love, and you invest in your family so your family is stronger, your family is greater, your family is richer, your family is better as a result of your input and what you give and what you contribute, to your own family. So, hey, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget, get a copy of the book, Dr. Teach Me to Parent. Go to Amazon and it's on there. You can pick it up or on my website. You can get it there as well. But great book for you as a parent to pick up some of the finer tips of parenting. And check in with our sponsors, make use of them, and many of them live on donations and live on your contribution. And find a sponsor there that you would really like to be part of and learn more about them and send them a few bucks. They appreciate that very much. If you'd like to be a sponsor, be in touch with me, okay? We'd love to have you join our family of sponsors, okay? Bye for now.
CentralValleyTalk.com